Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday edition of your breakfast show Leadership Television Inside Nigeria. Today is Thursday, 15th May 2025, and my name is Winifred Webo, your host on the program. On today's show, we are looking at what the papers are saying. Of course, the papers we have on our menu include Nigeria's most influential leadership. And as we normally do on the program, we go with leadership and see what leadership has in its menu today. Leadership says JAMB Registrar whips over mass unified tertiary matriculation examination, that is UTME, failure. Blames technical glitches, says failure caused by service provider. Reschedules exam for 379,997 candidates, while ASU threatens to sue. Leading story today on leadership, and incidentally is also the leading story in some of the papers we have on our lineup this Thursday. Let's see some excerpts from that leading story. JAMB Registrar whips over mass UTME failure. Blames technical glitches, says failure caused by service provider. Reschedules exam for 379,997 candidates. ASU threatens to sue. The story continues on page 4 of Leadership. We will take some excerpts from that leading story on Leadership newspaper this Thursday. The Registrar of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, Professor Ishak Olarewaju Oloyede, has shed tears over the mass failure of candidates in the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME. Oloyede confirmed that technical glitches affected candidates' performance, as he noted that there had been widespread complaints from candidates and parents over the poor results. Speaking at a press conference in Abuja yesterday, Oloyede, who was seen weeping, admitted that the disruption was caused by a service provider's failure to apply a necessary software patch properly. According to the examination agency, 1,955,069 results were processed, out of which only 4,756 candidates, that is 0.24%, scored 320 and above, considered top-tier performance. Meanwhile, 7,658 candidates, that is 0.39%, scored between 300 and 319, bringing the total for those who scored 300 and above to 12,414 candidates, that is 0.63%. Also, 73,441 candidates, that is 3.76%, scored between 250 and 299, while 334,560 candidates, that is 17.11%, scored between 200 and 249. Similarly, 983,187 candidates, that is 50.29%, scored between 160 and 199, which is widely regarded as the minimum admissions threshold in many institutions. Meanwhile, still on that leading story, one of the kickers says ASU threatens to sue JAMB over UTME mass failure. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, UNN branch, has threatened to sue the Joint Matriculation Board, Joint Matriculation Board, JAMB, over the massive failure recorded in the 2025 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination, UTME. Chairman of ASU, UNN, Comrade Oyibo Eze, disclosed this while briefing newsmen in Nsukka on Wednesday. Oyibo said the massive failure, which mainly affected candidates from the southeast, was JAMB's deliberate attempt to prevent children from the zone from getting admission. He said, in quote, "My office has been inundated with protests, calls and visits by parents and the general public on this deliberate massive failure in the 2025 JAMB examination. ASU will challenge this result in the High Court if JAMB fails to review it and give candidates their merited scores. JAMB knows that children from the southeast must score higher before getting admission, whereas their counterparts in some parts of the country will use a 120 JAMB score to get admission to read medicine in universities in their area. In the JAMB recently released results, out of 1,955,069 candidates who sat for the 2025 examination, Over 1.5 million candidates scored less than 200, and the majority of these are from the southeast and Lagos state, where many Igbos reside, he said. Those are the excerpts from today's leading story on Leadership newspaper. JAMB registrar whips over mass UTME failure. However, they said he has rescheduled the exam for 379,997 candidates, largely from the southeast and Lagos states. So the UNN ASU branch has nothing to fear or worry about, because the JAMB registrar has made good it has already signified his intention to resit exam for candidates from the southeast and Lagos states. Leading story today on leadership. Moving away from the main story, we have other stories gracing the cover of leadership as well. Bandits kidnapped 200 in my constituency. Zamfara lawmaker still on insecurity issues in the country. Bandits kidnapped 200 in my constituency, coming from Zamfara lawmaker. Benue residents flee over communal clashes. Senate confirms 5 INEC regs. PFN laments hardship, social challenges. That is Pentecostal Association of Nigeria laments hardship, social challenges. The story continues on page 25 of leadership. Moving towards the masthead of leadership, Southeast PDP hints on mass exit over national secretary crisis. The story continues on page 30 of leadership. Southeast PDP hints on mass exit over national secretary crisis. It's also a story that is the main cover in one of the stories we have, in one of the papers, we have on our lineup. And on the business boss, lifting Nigeria's import ban can raise revenue by 66%. World Bank. Lifting Nigeria's import ban can raise revenue by 66%. Coming from World Bank. This is on the heels of the recent pronouncement by President Bola Tinubu that on the Nigerian forced policy, which we close ban on import of some consumables, which he said the country can actually produce for itself. However, in response to that, World Bank says lifting Nigeria's import ban can actually raise revenue by 66%. Let's see excerpts from that business story. The World Bank has revealed that Nigeria could increase its customs revenue by 66% if the federal government lifts existing import bans and eliminates arbitrary tariff deviations. This recommendation was highlighted in the World Bank's Nigeria Development Update May 2025 edition, which noted that current trade policies distort prices, encourage smuggling, and weaken customs enforcement, resulting in significant revenue losses for the country. The report emphasized that Nigeria's average tariff rate is twice the sub-Saharan African average, and that import bans on products such as cement, certain food items, footwear, and over-the-counter drugs have led to increased tax evasion and higher consumer prices by about 5.8%. Excerpts also from the leading business story today on leadership cover. Lifting Nigeria's import ban can raise revenue by 66% from World Bank. Atop the masthead of leadership, DSSU's Patutomi overshadowed government. Recently, Patutomi said he was going to form a shadow government, and in response to that, DSSU's Patutomi overshadowed government. Lastly, on the cover of leadership, reps demand mandatory diphtheria immunization. The story continues on page 7 of leadership. It's on that note we move to page 3 of the paper, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on solar power in hospitals. Solar power in hospitals. The unreliability of public power supply is no longer news. However, with the unbundling of the Power Holding Company of Nigeria, PHCN, the success recorded in the telecommunications sector was a good reason for Nigerians to expect such a miracle to happen in the power sector. So far, that has turned out to be a misplaced hope. As a newspaper, we are calling on the federal government to consider providing targeted subsidies to the health sector to reduce operating costs, which are made worse by the skyrocketing cost of energy. Nigeria, as a signatory to the Abuja Declaration, should do the needful by honoring the commitment of allocating 15% of its annual budget to the health sector to achieve a robust healthcare system. The right to health is fundamental. Without electricity, hospitals, which should save lives, will continue to be the opposite. Decisive action in the energy sector should be taken to prevent this silent catastrophe from becoming a global model of systemic failure. Solar power may be a good starting point. These are also excerpts from today's stand in leadership, solar power in hospitals. It's on that note we move to the back page where we have guest column today with Sean Oliver and Jashri Rahman. Guest column today on the back of leadership, which takes over from, of course, just a guest, which today replaced that of Thursday column, being blunt with Muazu Eliza. Today's guest column is on despite battles won, advances made, anti-malaria war lingers. Africa is home to malaria mosquitoes that prefer biting humans to other animals. Quote from today's guest columnist: despite battles won, advances made, anti-malaria war lingers. Before we leave the back page, we must not fail to bet at Ghana Must Go. Obasanjo says our job is not done, and Ghana Must Go replied, cleaning your mess is a question. What is on that note, we conclude review of leadership newspaper this Thursday. For more, log into the website of leadership, www.leadership.ng. We move over to the Punch newspaper where we are still talking about UTME mass failure. It says JAMB boss whips as human error forces Lagos Southeast receipts. JAMB boss whips as human error forces Lagos Southeast receipts. 206,610 candidates affected in Lagos, 173,387 in Southeast. JAMB WAEC meets to avoid timetables clash. Leading story on the Punch cover. Mass failure, JAMB boss whips as human error forces Lagos Southeast receipts. It's also same story with that of leadership. NNPC didn't remit 500 billion naira revenue in 2024 coming from World Bank. The story runs on page 19 of the Punch. NNPC didn't remit 500 billion naira revenue in 2024. It's a story that is going to trend for days now because they're considering the enormity of this allegation. NNPC didn't remit 500 billion naira revenue in 2024. PDP crisis worsens as Southeast caucus moves defection. PDP crisis worsens as Southeast caucus moves defection. Afrima 2025, AU awards host city rights to Lagos. And still on the Punch newspaper, rising insecurity. Tinubu governors to deploy 130,000 new forest guards nationwide. Rising insecurity. Tinubu governors to deploy 130,000 new forest guards nationwide. The story runs on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. It's also on that note we conclude review of front headline stories on the Punch this Thursday. For more, log into the website of the Punch. Even as we move to the next paper on our lineup, and that is The Guardian. The Guardian says JAMB admits system error, released 379,997 candidates for fresh exam. JAMB admits system error, released 379,997 candidates for fresh exam. The story continues on page 6 of The Guardian. Afrima 2025, AU awards host city rights to Lagos. LUTH, that is Lagos University Teaching Hospital, decries staff shortage, high electricity bills amid infrastructure gains. CBN targets $1 billion monthly remittances from BVN assets for Nigerians in diaspora. Civ leaders accuse national government of ethnic cleansing, land seizure under guise of development. Federal government upbeat about reforms amid criticism over proposed London press conference. Federal government upbeat about reforms amid criticism over proposed London press conferences. Of course, I knew this is going to be a story that will generate controversies when it was reported that some ministers are storming London to give updates about their performance in office. And one begins to ask, what has London got to do with it? Your constituency is in Nigeria. Why move over to London to do press conference on your performance in office? Federal government upbeat about reforms amid criticism over proposed London press conference. This story runs on page 6 of The Guardian. DSSU's party Tommy overshadow government plan. The story is on page 5 of The Guardian. That takes us to the stories just beneath the masthead of The Guardian. Fresh killings in Benue Plateau claim over 23 persons cattle. Boko Haram uses how to detect armed drones in Borno, OPHK reveals. NAND raises alarm over house officers' plight, exodus of doctors. The story is on page 3 of The Guardian. NAND, that is a National Association of Resident Doctors, raises alarm over house officers' plight, exodus of doctors. It's also on that note we conclude review of front headline stories of The Guardian newspaper this Thursday. For more, log into www.guardian.ng. We move over to the next paper we have on our lineup with a different cover story altogether, and that is Vanguard. Vanguard is still on the issue of insecurity. It's a bandits feed our babies to their dogs. Zamfara lawmaker. Insecurity, bandits feed our babies to their dogs. Zamfara lawmaker says bandits now established as de facto authorities over local residents. Military more determined than ever to go after terrorists, coming from the Chief of Defense Staff, CDS. Insecurity, bandits feed our babies to their dogs. Zamfara lawmaker says bandits now established as de facto authorities over local residents. And CDS says military more determined than ever to go after terrorists. British envoy, worrisome insecurity is spillover from Sudan, Niger. The story runs on page 5 of Vanguard. First bank motion dismissed by court, coming from General Hydrocarbons Limited. Of course, this is the face-off between First Bank and General Hydrocarbons Limited. You could see this, the editorial advertorial on the masthead, above the masthead of Vanguard. Court dismisses application filed by General Hydrocarbons Limited to compel the Deputy Chief Registrar to serve the orders of court on the parties to the suit, including the Nigerian Navy, NUPROC, NIMASA, and Harbour Master. And the reply from GHL is also on the cover of Vanguard. Customs intercepts explosives concealed in 5 cartons of Quran. Customs intercepts explosives concealed in 5 cartons of Quran. The story continues on page 7 of Vanguard. 2025 UTME JAMB admits error, says 379,999 candidates to retake exam. ASU threatens legal action. Admission of error acceptable. NAMTAN. Candidates in 157 centers affected. Weeping not enough, resign now. Varsity Dawn tells Registrar. AU awards Afrima hosting rights to Lagos. Cybercrime Act. Federal government partners, NAS, media, orders on review. Information Minister. Now sports. 2025 under-20 AFCON. Harcourt upbeat. Flying Eagles will beat South Africa. 2025 under-20 AFCON. Harcourt upbeat. Flying Eagles will beat South Africa. And that concludes the review of front headline stories on Vanguard this Thursday. For more, don't forget to log into the website of Vanguard. We move to the next paper on our lineup, and that also has different story cover altogether, and that is THISDAY. THISDAY says Southeast Caucus will quit PDP if Ude Okoye is not returned National Secretary. This is the leading story on THISDAY today, although it's featured in cover of a previous newspaper for review. However, THISDAY is the main cover story. Southeast Caucus will quit PDP if Ude Okoye is not returned National Secretary. offers pathway to peace, unity, stability. Mba, Southeast must stand together. Wabara, we've been trampled upon too many times. Udenwa, we don't want to be taken for granted any longer. Secretarial staff management decry crisis, support governor's position. Afrima 2025 AU Awards host city right to Lagos, Nigeria, hosts November 25 to 30. We have the picture of Dangote, Africa's richest man, in a handshake with Donald Trump in Doha, Qatar, yesterday, during Trump's visit to Qatar. Still on this day newspaper, above the masthead, federal government, Nigeria attracted over $8 billion in deep water oil, gas FIDs in less than 1 year. Verheyen laments projected fall in Africa's upstream capital from $340 billion to $130 billion. Says indigenous firms' equity in Nigeria's gas assets now 83%. Local oil service providers Justo for contracts in shares $5 billion Bonga projects. These are kickers to the leading story about the masthead of this day. Federal government, Nigeria attracted over $8 billion in deep water oil, gas FIDs in less than 1 year. Verheyen laments projected fall in Africa's upstream capital from $340 billion to $130 billion. Says indigenous firms' equity in Nigeria's gas assets now 83%. Local oil service providers Justo for contracts in shares $5 billion Bonga project. Kickers to the leading story on above the masthead of this day. It's also on this note we bring to an end review of front headline stories on this day newspaper this Thursday, May 15, 2025. For continuation of this headline story, don't forget to log into the website of this day newspaper. So, when viewers is on this note, we've also come to the end of today's Thursday production of your breakfast show Leadership Inside Nigeria. Don't forget to join us still on this station for news on the hour. My name is Winifred Ubebo. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast.